everybody, Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV, and we are live on the Drum Talk TV Facebook page, but only if you're watching us live. Otherwise, you're watching us on the archive. I'm broadcasting to you as always, well, as usual, from Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains. And we have Kenny Aronoff joining us from his studio in Los Angeles. Kenny, how are you?
I'm great, man. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. I mean, I'm the podcast dude these days. Oh my God. There's so many, people ask me, they go like, wow, Kenny, because they know, I mean, I was supposed to go out with Joe Satriani, John Fogerty, and Supersonic Blues Machine, but they ask me, they go like, man, how are you? Is everything okay? And I'm like, you don't know Kenny Aronoff if you're asking that question. Come on, how am I? I'm great. I'm always great because I'm always surviving. I'm always, you know what? It's like a running back in football. I mean, the greatest running backs in football sometimes fumble or sometimes they break their leg.
Yeah.
You just get back to it.
That's right. Absolutely. Kenny, there's so many things to talk to you about that I already say this, we'll have to do this again. But let's start with this. There's a lot of people that know certain aspects of your career. I'm not sure there's anyone that knows everything about your career, which is great. But where I'd like to start, if it's okay, is I'd love to start where one of your big turning points was, and that was back in 88, 89. I remember it happening when you first started with John Cougar Mellencamp and had these great hits. And my first question is, it's a double-sided question. What was it like to work with John in the beginning? And when you guys were recording these great songs, this great music, these great albums, did you have any inkling it would turn into what it became, even from the beginning when it just took off like a rocket?
Well, I mean, I had a huge classical background because when I'm so old that there was no school of rock when I was a kid. There was nobody, there wasn't even a teacher in my town to teach rock and roll drums. I was self-taught, but I started studying classical music with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Was 3 miles from my house, and there was and so I started to get through it fast. I basically started studying percussion. I got good enough to get into a college where classical was the focus, a little bit of a jazz thing. And I immediately transferred to Indiana University, which was the #1 school of music in the country. It's so hard to get in, but it's even harder to stay in. It's very like Navy SEAL, like you have to prove yourself every single semester or you get thrown out. That's why they're #1. There's no hand holding or coddling in that school. So it's the absolute best of the best. Anyway, I got a formal training. I eventually got into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. I went from basically like the bottom to the top. And and so then I decided to follow I turned it down because I basically turned down certainty for complete uncertainty, which is the rock and roll business. I had a gig in Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. It was a big honor. My parents were ecstatic. They had put me through 5 years of college, and here I actually went from not being a great reader, never having played a marimba, to winning a concerto competition. I remember we played a violin concerto, a virtuosic violin concerto on marimba in my senior year with a 60-piece orchestra in a opera hall the size of the New York Met. And
wow.
Yeah, and literally I practiced that piece 2 hours a day, 365 days. Wow. And that really sums up Kenny Aronoff. I'm not the most talented guy in the world. I'm not maybe the best looking, but no, anyway, it's just absolute. I just pound it. I just pound it and pound it and pound it. And when the people that are more talented than me, they are just brilliant, and I'll never be them. But there's something I have from just working hard that makes people want me on their team. It makes me
about preparedness, right? And did the classical education have a huge part in that role for you, in that ethic?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the only way I could do Kennedy Center honors, 7 of those, the Obama inauguration, all these big TV things like the Beatles tribute, the CBS special, and I Changed America. When I walk in, I've actually heard remarks like, oh, God, thank God he's here. And it's not the drumming element, it's the persistence in the organization and the ruthless attitude that I will solve a problem when we're recording and filming with 16 cameras live and something goes wrong. When you got 25 artists, something's going to go wrong, and you're rehearsing up until an hour before the show, and I have all the tempos, all the count offs. I know who to count off. I know to wait for two guitar players to tune. I know what the whoever is like talking, what their last four words are, so I know when. I know everything, and so the producer and the stage manager and the musical director really count on me for those elements aside from drumming. And I just learned that from experience, and that discipline from an orchestra, being in a school like Indiana University, and performing and working with the teacher there, and those conductors that are ruthless. I mean, I got into Tanglewood, which was 4 consecutive years of auditioning, rejected 3 times by Vic Firth, and finally I get accepted. Only 7 percussionists in the world got into that student orchestra, and I got to work with Leonard Bernstein, Seiji Ozawa, Aaron Copland, Arthur Fiedler. Every conductor that worked with the Boston Symphony Orchestra that summer, I got to work with. And I'm telling you, there ain't no hand-holding or coddling. You either hit a home run or strike out and go home.
Yeah,
it
show up
is
and
that
blow up
level.
or it's over.
Huh?
Show up or blow up or it's over.
Yeah, but the thing is that's what made me more who I am than anything. So when I got back into rock and roll, I mean, I always played drums. In those schools, I didn't teach drum set. Right. It was all timpani and mallets, conducting, piano, sight singing, music history, music literature, plus your other academics. And I'll say one thing. I went into my lesson with my teacher the first day, and I didn't have a pencil or eraser. He threw me out and gave me an F.
Oh, wow.
Now that's who I was dealing with. Yeah. You walk in, one day I walked in for a lesson. I'm just standing there, just terrified. And he taps the desk. He wants my lesson book, and he's writing notes. And he looks at me, opens up and goes, F sharp harmonic minor, 2 octaves, started with the right hand, 2 octaves, 3, 4. And I'm still standing there. And he goes, Kenny, are you happy here at Indiana University? That's what he said to me.
Wow, we know what that
Never did I ever come in to any rehearsal since without with a lot of pencils and erasers and sharpeners. Or did I ever not show up and be prepared, whether it's John Mellencamp or whether it's the MD for the Kennedy Center Honors, where when they show up, I'm in position, ready to go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That taught me that kind of discipline, which in the looseness and the coolness of rock and roll, you still have to be a bad-ass professional. And here's the main thing. People then depend on you. They will hire you because they know Kenny's a lot of fun. He can have fun and party like the rest of us, but boy, does he take care of business. And people used to ask me, well, the bottom line is, I'll just say the answer. My career is more important than anything else. So I know when to stop partying. I know when to pull myself back in line, so that the ultimate thing is that I'm a bad mofo at anything I do related to my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's all about ethic. And when you got with John, having this background, having this real strict and dedicated foundation, when you got with John, was the work environment, as far as the writing and recording, was there a complete alignment, or was there some sort of a whole different thing going on there that you both adapted to? How did that cohesiveness come about? Was it approached from different angles or the same?
And I'm sorry I didn't answer your first question, which is kind of what you got. When I got with John, Nobody in the band knew how to read music except the piano player. When there was a piano player there, he was schooled at Indiana University, but everybody else didn't know how to read music. What I had to do is learn how to use my ears more, and they would make fun of me because I wrote everything out. I'd write, they understood song form, they understood hit singles, they understood hook lines, they understood drum beats. That basically the purpose of a drummer which I had to learn. The purpose of a drummer in a band or when you're making a record is only one thing. Only one thing. Everything filters through that one thing, and that is get the song on the radio to be number one. So anything you think, anything you play, any cymbal you pick, any drum is not about you. It's about the song.
Right.
Obviously, you're doing it. It's not about me. It's about we.
Yeah.
It's a team thing. My job is to get John's songs on the radio. Obviously, I scored big time with that. But so John couldn't speak the language that I did, and I got teased because I was a reader and schooled, and I had to just deal with it. John, though, on the other hand, was like brilliant in understanding how to brand, market, write songs for the radio, be a cool thing. He understood cool. Even if he didn't know what to tell you to play, he knew what you were playing, whether it was good or not.
Gotcha.
He was like almost like an interior decorator. He walked into the studio after about rehearsal after we were doing the second record I played drums on, which was which had Pink Houses, The Authority song, and Crumbling Down. He goes, "Hey, listen, you guys, I write the same songs. I expect you guys to come up with creative, innovative parts to make these songs hits on the radio. And Kenny, if somebody has a cooler beat to play than what you're playing, you play it. You guys, nobody owns their instruments. We all play each other's instruments. It's about getting the song on the radio to be hits." Now, back then, I was like, God damn, what a jerk. But he was right. His delivery was not very good. Obviously, he was that pretty, like, attitude was intense, like a football coach or a Marine drill sergeant. But his concept was spot on. Yeah.
It sounds
Because
like he really led by conviction and his vision. You know, he put you all there and was saying, this is how we're going to get there. And you guys fell in line and made it happen.
Absolutely. And he had picked the right guys. He had an instinct. Like, I got the gig, and I had a lot to learn about how to play hit singles and come up with drum parts that are iconic. You know, playing in the classical world and playing bebop, jazz, and fusion, I was looking through a telescope. Now I was looking through a microscope. And a microscope is just as valid as a telescope. It's just two different worlds. And I had to readjust and reformulate my business plan and my whole concept and my whole direction of what is a drummer in this band. And so, yeah, John was tough. But I learned a lot. Once Jack and Diane, I came up with that part. Most people know the story, but I was fighting for my life. It was kind of a do or die. Either come up with that part at the moment, or I'd probably lose my job. And I scored a touchdown. Became John's biggest number one hit single, probably one of the two most air drummed drum parts on pop radio ever, that and In the Air Tonight.
Yeah.
And been on the radio for 38 years. I reached my goal as an employee. I made the corporation John Mellencamp a lot of money because of that song. That's my job. It launched my career and completely blew his career up because that album, American Fool, won 2 Grammys, and those songs, well, at least 2 of them, Jack and Diane and Hurt So Good, were played on the radio still to this day.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. I mean, are they going to be, there's a lot of music out there that's hip right now that you'll never hear from in 10 years. It just won't matter.
It won't be relevant, and exactly, it's totally on par with the fact that Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon was on the charts for decades and decades in the top 10. It's just an amazing story. Before you got with John, Kenny, and started playing that kind of music, What were you doing on the drum set? Was it the jazz? Was it fusiony? Was it a whole different thing where you had to really corral yourself down and follow this new formula? What were you doing before you jumped on the
Well,
drum set?
it all started when I was playing. I was 10 years old playing outside with my twin brother, and in Western Massachusetts there was nothing to watch on TV. My mom screams for at us to come in the house immediately. I thought I was in trouble, of course, and usually was. And we get into the family room. She's pointing to this black and white TV set we had with the rabbit ears, and because we lived up there in the mountains, and it was the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. And when I saw that, I'm like, I'm bouncing off the walls. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I was going crazy. And I said, Mom, who are those guys? Even though Ed Sullivan had announced them. She says, they're the Beatles. I said, I want to be in the Beatles. Call them up. Get me in the band. Call them. Let's do it. I want to play with the Beatles.
How
And I
old were
want a
you when
drum
you were
set.
thinking like that?
Well, I was just 10 years old. Your mom does everything for you, It's
Yeah.
like, I didn't know what to do. So, and I love that how Ringo was way up high and his hair and the whole thing was so cool.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And without realizing it, that had ignited in my heart what my purpose in life was before I even understood what those words meant. And, realizing what your purpose in life, the reason why, let me take a moment to explain how important that is.
Sure.
Life is very short, and realizing your purpose in life, which comes from a place in your heart, not necessarily your brain, when you live your life by your purpose, you will be authentic, you'll be undeniable, you'll be unstoppable, as I am. I'm the guy that can't wait to wake up in the morning to do what I do. And I'm also the guy that doesn't want to turn the lights off at night because I'm still digging what I'm doing and I can't wait to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That being said, my mom didn't call the Beatles up, so I started my own band. 2 weeks later, all I could afford was a cymbal and a snare drum, and we played Beatles songs. So that was so much my purpose and my passion. All I could think about was rock and roll and the Beatles. So I created my own Beatles. Now, all through junior high and high school, bands, playing in bands, self-taught. Oh, I had like a Crosby, Stills, a Neil Young band, an Allman Brothers band, a Crosby, Stills, Nash band, a Hendrix band, a Stones band. I mean, I had a barn, and it was like, I would do school when I was in high school. I'd do school. Then I was on 3 varsity sports by the time I was 16. I was a super jock. So I would play sports and go home, do my homework, and then I'd have rock and roll band practice from 8 till midnight every day. And so I was a self-taught guy, and all through college I played in rock bands, but because when my dad and mom were from New York, so jazz was always on the turntable, and they had taken me to see heavy jazz, like Stan Getz, Miles Davis, Buddy Rich Big Band, Dave Brubeck, the Modern Jazz Quartet. I saw all that in my little area of growing up, and I started to learn how to play bebop. Mm-hmm. So I was playing bebop and rock and roll. Got to college, got in the big bands because I could tell I had a real swing feel and a real understanding of jazz, even though my technique was not very good. But I was authentic because I grew up with it, and yeah. So, and then I got fusion became good, and I was chasing after Billy Cobham. I tell Billy Cobham all the time that, Jesus, dude, you almost ruined my career because I was trying to sound like you, which is impossible, but I was trying to, which was the worst education to be a drummer for a Mellencamp. The bottom line is I was really shooting to be the technique guy and go for it. Always playing rock and roll and anything, any style of music made me happy. Rock and roll is my favorite, but I played every style of music, and that brings me to, and I'm not even letting you ask me the question, but that brings me to, in this business, you're lucky if you get in a band that lasted 17 years with hit after hit after hit after hit. We went from 2,000 seat venues to 20,000 private jets, living the dream, staying at the Four Seasons hotels, just people standing the whole concert, singing every lyric. and I'm a member of the band, which means they know me. I'm like the Keith Richards of the band. It's John and me. And it was iconic for 17 years, not 1 year, not 2 years, 17. And of course, he's gone on to stay, relevant. But the point is, but then to make it as a session drummer, which is
Yes.
a whole nother world,
Yes.
and to have 2 drum sets in Nashville, 2 sets in New York, 2 sets in LA, a ton in Indiana, one in Germany, one in Japan. And the budgets were so big that I'd fly around all over the world recording just one song, a whole album, whatever. And then to go one step further, to have a diverse catalog where somehow, miraculously, I got asked to play in every style of music. I mean, that's just unheard of. Like, obviously, the obvious is the Mellencamp, the Bob Seger, the Bob Dylan, the Springsteen, the Elton Johns, the Rod Stewarts, the Santanas, or anything on the radio, the Celine Dion's. But then Tony Iommi from Sabbath,
Yeah.
Stryper, Michael Sweet from Stryper, the Alice Cooper, the Smashing Pumpkins
John
I
Bon
toured with.
Jovi.
I mean, Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Then Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings and the Highwaymen, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis. Then B.B. King and the Blues World, Buddy Guy, Ray Charles, Joe Cocker for 10 years.
Yeah.
Chickenfoot. I mean, it's just all over the place. That
And
is
Kenny,
ridiculous.
yeah, and Kenny, what I want to point out, and folks, I'll look at comments in a moment, I promise. Hang in there, and maybe we'll take a couple questions. Kenny, what I wanted to mention was, I don't know, my wife and I talk about this all the time. I don't know if there'll be bands that come about now or in 5 years or from 5 years ago that will have that 10, let alone 17, 20-year longevity. That's number one. Number two, I was going to ask you something you just answered. I was going to ask, with your wide arc of the spectrum of the different genres and styles of music that you've played, what is the north, south, east, west of it? And you just mentioned that, and I appreciate that. For you viewers, I want you to understand, and Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong or off on this, but I want the viewers to understand that the point of that part of the conversation has nothing to do with bragging or anything. It's to make you understand that music is music, and the more prepared you are, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more likely you are to be empowered to have experiences like that and take on work. If I may tell a quick story, when I was 15, my mom found an audition to go on a tour, and I went to this audition, and the drummer was going to be leaving, and so I got to watch them rehearse. And it was basically a singing group with bass drums and piano. It was like an Up With People kind of thing, and they were all older. I was 15, and they were playing stuff like Neil Diamond, Barbra Streisand, Linda Ronstadt, stuff like that. And at 15, I was playing old Yes, Genesis, Zeppelin, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd. I leaned over to my mom and I said, "Mom, I don't want to play this kind of stuff." She literally turned and grabbed me by the shirt and said, "What difference does it make what kind of music it is? They're going to pay you to see the country playing music. Your father and I could never send you on a trip like this." That was the moment where I realized, and Kenny, back then on 93 KHJ in Los Angeles, music was not segregated. Like, back then, as a little kid, I'd put on headphones and play to the Rolling Stones, and then
Yeah.
Bobby Sherman, and then Steppenwolf, then Zeppelin, then Engelbert Humperdinck. It was all on the same station, then funk and
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
that my mom shaking me made me realize that, and I did go on that tour. I had to learn a whole show within 3 weeks, had 4 rehearsals, never played at the audition because the guy just asked afterwards, "So what do you think? Do you think you could play that kind of music? What's your
Wow.
experience?" And I told him about playing in Tuesday night jazz band at school, first chair in orchestra and concert band, and that I was playing all those bands that I mentioned. He never even auditioned me. He said, "Come next Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Your mom, is it okay if he goes on the tour? Let me talk to him." So the reason I tell my story is so that you
Cool.
all really just sort of understand on any level. I'm certainly not the Kenny Aronoff level, but on my own level, I had amazing experience because I embraced the fact that as much as I loved this color music, I would take work and have fun, and I still do, playing many different kinds of music. It's so important, folks. Don't put yourself in a box. Kenny, is this anywhere close to maybe the top one or two things that drummers miss in their playing? I think one of the things they miss is the first thing you articulated in the interview, the business part, being prepared, the work ethic. But in their playing, what are some of the top things that most drummers, or musicians for that matter, miss? Is it just putting themselves in a box? Is it not expand? What is it?
Well, I mean, this goes beyond music and drumming. It goes as your attitude about life. It's being open-minded, compassionate, willing to learn from anything and anybody, recognizing genius, no matter what it is. It could be in medicine, it could be an astronaut, it could be in weaving baskets. I don't know. The point is, and you want to be open to. I appreciate anything that's done well. That's my point. So in music, and I don't if somebody is like, let's say like a Dave Grohl, it's rock and roll. It's rock and roll. That's who he is. However, and he obviously scored, but he then learned guitar, bass, vocals, songwriting, drumming. Everybody in that band goes, God damn.
He got just as good at all of it.
It's hard to work for a guy who plays all their instruments better than them. But anyway, my point is, but he's a rock guy, and I use him as an example because when I did the first Kennedy Center honors, I was honoring The Who, and I had to do George Jones. So I'm playing with 7 artists. One was Dave Grohl, doing Who songs. Chris Cornell was another one of them, and they go one after another. But then I said to Dave, I said, check this out. He watched my rehearsal. Watch how I play when I do the country segment. Completely different drummer.
Wow.
Yeah, I said, Dave, watch. Keith Moon, you beat the shit out of the drums. You're all over the place. You're like a solo drummer, pounding into the heads. Bass drum pedal right in the head.
Yeah, laying
country music, hi-hat, very soft. Bass drum, beater off the head. You want to make sure that the bass is louder than the kick drum. Kick drum is just giving a little bit of a support or an accent to those tones. Snare drum, no rim shot, hit off the rim, just the head. Time, right in the middle of the beat, and unless you feel you should slide a little back and rarely forward. It was just a complete different attitude. And Dave came up to me afterwards and went like, holy jeez, I never even thought about it like that. And that's because he never had to. Right. So with Dave is like a genius. He's like a one of a kind, a rare, amazing human being. I've never seen him not smiling and happy, the most positive guy in the world, shows in his music, devoted to his craft, humble and hungry. I wasn't talented like that. So as a drummer, I just love music, makes me feel good. So I was willing to play any kind of music. But what happened in the process is that ended up making me a badass session drummer and a guy that people would hire to do anything. And it's hard, even if you can play all those styles, for people to acknowledge you as that. Right. It's hard to get the recognition. Hey, I can play that. Oh, I can play. Like just the other day, I recorded an R&B song, but I'm talking 16th notes with the right hand, accents opening up. I mean, it wasn't just a sample. It was hardcore R&B. So I write the whole chart out. When somebody sends me tracks, I write every note out and replicate that. At least I give them that back, and then I give them 2 other takes with some variation. But I had to practice. I practiced for about 4 hours on that to get that style embedded in my soul, so that when I did record it, I wasn't just reading notes. You could hear that I actually owned it. And I've been doing that my whole life. And so every style of music helps the other. Right. But let me add this. If you want to make it as a drummer or a musician, it's best that you make it in one area big so that you can bring those other ideas into what you're known for. Right. So I made it big as a rock drummer, so everybody knows who Kenny Aronoff is, and then all that other stuff that I know, and I play tons of percussion on all, records I play on, especially Mellencamp. I used to build tracks on percussion first and then overdub the drums. And you get known for one thing, and then you can bring all these other ideas. You should never stop learning. Look when Jack and Diane went to number one, at that very moment, I was on the number one hit single. This ain't like today, where you got 1,000 charts and somebody said, I'm on like 20 number one hit singles. Yeah, on what chart and what music and what, back then there was only a couple of charts. So if you were number one on the top 100, you were on every radio station, you were on Saturday Night Live, you were on all the TV shows, on, MTV. I mean, you couldn't get away from you. It was like, shut up. I can't stand that song. So, so I celebrated for about 2 seconds, and then I went into fear. And I was excited that, oh my God, I did it. But immediately I realized, just because you're number one today doesn't mean you're number one tomorrow.
How do you follow your own act?
Exactly. And how do you practice to be number one again? How do you prepare for that? I was freaking out because there was no answer. I don't know what John's next song is going to be. And let me tell you, from that day forward, when John would play a song twice on acoustic guitar, and they sounded similar, like he said, he'd look at me and go, what do you got? And when he said, what do you got? It's not a joke.
Right.
He's like, make this song a hit now. Yeah. And if you don't, he's like, if you play a beat that wasn't right, you go, that's stupid. That's, so I came up with a method, by the way, of how to embrace that challenge. But my point is I was constantly tested, and I'd have to think out of the box. And thank God, there's one song called Minutes to Memories, and I'm playing this great, it goes, bow, ba-da, bow, ba, ba-da. And then the verse is, I'm doing a cross stick on the rim and slamming it with my right hand, and I got that idea from a country session I had done.
There you go.
Yeah. And it was John is like, something that simple, goes, that is cool. It wasn't just cut, it was like flap, boom, flap, and my hand is muffling the drum, and it's a certain sound I can't replicate with my mouth. Yeah. But I grabbed that literally from Nashville and pulled that into John's music. Or I played timpani, I played mallet, vibes on some of John's songs. I orchestrated sometimes. And there was one song, I can't remember what it was, and I was in LA, and he wanted me to put together, because loops were starting to come in. I must have played 24 different instruments and orchestrated it from the bottom up. And that experience put me in a room with Neil Peart when Steve Ferrone on the Buddy Rich, the Burning for Buddy CDs, he did, this is a great story. I'm in Morin Heights, an hour outside of Montreal in the studio, working with Corey Hart, and all of a sudden Neil Peart's head pops, and I'm like, Neil, what are you doing here? He goes, come here. He says, I just live around the corner. You're up in a gorgeous house. He says, look, I'm mixing this Buddy Rich CDs, 2 of them, and Steve Ferrone played Pick Up the Pieces by Average White Band, and he doesn't like to do drum solos, so he just grooved through it. I think we need to put some percussion. Would you work with me on that? I went, are you kidding me?
Wow, I never knew about this. This is awesome.
So we sat in a room, but I'd had so much experience building tracks. So I said, why don't we start with the low instruments? The biggest drums we could find, like congas or tumbas or anything low. And then we would sit across from each other. We called ourselves, he was bald at that point, the Bald Bandito Brothers. And if you look at my autobiography, he wrote the foreword to it, and he mentioned, and we then orchestrated together and just kept working up, in different frequencies. And it was the coolest. And that was I knew that from my orchestral training that then fed into the Mellencamp thing. So yeah, look at the new Joe Satriani record I just did called Shape Shifting. Every song is a different style of music. There's ones that's kind of like Indian Latin, you know. So when I play it, it's not like I'm a rock drummer. I'm like playing it from a place of like, oh yeah, I've played Latin music. I've played kind of something that triggered a lot of experiences with me that I was able to tap into. Another song was like a Police song. So I was playing like Stuart Copeland. Another song was country. Then it went into like 50s blues in Chicago. Well, I played big band, so I really played it with authenticity.
Yeah.
I try to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah. Kenny, thank you for that. And I want to back up on 2 points. One is for context. When was that you did that with Neil?
That I want to say that was early 90s because that record came out in I want to say 92, 93, 94.
Yeah, I think 92ish. Yeah. And I want everyone to really take notice to something that hopefully didn't go over their heads, and that is backing up to when you mentioned how John would play something on the acoustic guitar and look at you and say, "What do you got?" And the whole implication of making this a hit. Folks, whether you're a drummer, a musician, or casual music fan, don't ever think for a moment that the drummer does not have a role in making a song a hit. Look at Ringo and his backup band. Look at Keith Moon and his backup band. Look at John Bonham, and John Bonham had a pretty good backup band. We can go on and on. But the point of what you said, I think is so wonderful that, that the drummer is not the background guy. If the beat's not there, if the groove isn't there, it's not there. We have a shirt. We've got like 3 dozen Drum Talk TV shirts that I came up with. One of them says, "Your band is only as good as your drummer." And it's sort of a funny thing, like, hey, wear this to a rehearsal, to an audition, wear it to a studio set. But it's freaking serious. If your drummer sucks, and a lot of people jump in and say, "Oh, but what about Lars and Metallica?" Metallica wouldn't be where they are without Lars. Stop bagging on Lars. I don't understand the disdain for Lars when none of you have anything near what he's got. I don't get it. But the point
You're right.
Right? What's up with that? I don't get it. It's somehow fashionable to hate on someone that who's playing evolved and now you don't like it, so now they suck. Nothing sucks just because you don't like it, folks. I don't get that.
Dude, I saw an email, or not an email. Somebody sent me a message that just trashed me this year. I never reply, by the way. You just don't. It's just no point. This guy went, I don't get it. I just don't get why you are so big. Why? I don't get what Aronoff is. I don't get it. You don't have the feel. And then he went and compared me to Dave Weckl. Peter Erskine, my friend. I mean, wait a minute. We're not even in the same genre. Of course, I don't sound like Dave Weckl. I can't play like Dave Weckl, who's a friend of mine. My point is that the people will rag on other people. Look, it's a team sport. Yeah. And reasons why. Well, listen, when I was a kid, I loved Ringo, but then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, he doesn't play like Buddy Rich. And everybody put Ringo down because he wasn't playing with a lot of technique.
And what's with match grip?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ringo, or Charlie Watts? You go ask Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger will not tour if Charlie Watts is not there because of the feel, the personality. Everything aside from the beat he's playing is crucial. Yeah. I was recording with the Rolling Stones. This is the greatest lead singer story ever. Mick Jagger is a huge lead singer. He's the top. Yeah. The Stones. And we're recording, and it's 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm playing a gourd with a brush. And Mick was either playing acoustic guitar or Keith, and he comes up to me and says, "Hey, mate," and Charlie's right in front of me. He says, "I love what you're doing, but don't get in the way of Charlie's feel on the hi-hat." Because Charlie was going, and of course, when the album came out, I was mixed out of the mix. But what that told me was like,
It's all about the drummer.
no, it's about all of them.
You're right.
He knows that the Stone sound, a big part of the Stone sound is Charlie's feel.
Yeah.
And I went like, I was thinking, what a cool lead singer. 'Cause a lot of lead singers think it's all about them.
Right.
What does he care? He doesn't care about drums, whatever.
Right.
But no, he knew the feel of Charlie. Don't want to get away with that. And so I was mixed out of that song. But man, it's so true.
Kenny, what do you think about that? Like when we talk about Lars, when we talk about Charlie, and we talk about Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, these masters that get lambasted for their simplicity or what is wrong with people? That is the essence of what makes it work. It starts with that. And without that foundation, none of the other stuff means anything. I mean, I don't understand. And I like to believe that, our tribe is a big cohesive community of drummers, but when it really comes down to it, we are also human and we don't like the same things. We don't always understand the same things. And I think that's often where the impasse is mixing up our likes with our understanding of how things work. I think that's the separation, and those three guys, I think, sort of epitomize that in a way,
Well, I think it's just natural for humans to be competitive and jealous, and we're just humans, and that's part of our life lesson and what we're learning, how to be compassionate, how to, I mean, look, I didn't get where I am from not being competitive. I'm a competitive mofo. Yeah. I work hard, but I focus on me getting better. Yeah. I'm not sitting there, sending bombs through the mail to people, but I know how it is. You go like, well, I understand now as when you're a kid, you go like, well, I can play better than him. How come I don't got that gig? It's so much more involved.
If you have to ask that, you won't understand the answer.
Yeah, eventually, hopefully you understand it. John Mellencamp said, hey, I can find plenty of great musicians. I'm looking for guys I get along with. We're only on stage for 2 or 3 hours. I want people I have fun with and get along with on the other 21 hours.
Yeah, you gotta live
together. I went, wow, okay. That's what great coaches like Bill Belichick from the Patriots does. The great Super Bowl teams they can win a Super Bowl with a B team because they know how to work as a team, and they will snooker another team that's filled with great athletes, but they're not as much of a team as just like what happened last year with Kansas City against San Fran. San Fran was winning the game with 6.5 minutes left, but the component of, I mean, both teams were excellent. But Mahomes had that ingredient that even at 6.5 minutes, I was going, oh, geez. Oh, no, I was giving up. Not Mahomes.
Right.
He pumped his team up, both offense and defense. Next thing you know, the defense, for the first time in the game, stopped San Francisco 3 and out, and they got the ball back. 3 and out, they get the ball back. And then Mahomes screams some wild play called the Wasp, sent him heading backwards 15 yards, whipped the ball in a spot, which is the Wasp. You got Hill, the fastest running back in football, out of nowhere, shows up on that spot. And they score. Now it's 20-17. It was 20-10. Now it's 20-17. And that's where San Francisco went, oh, Jesus. Now they had to then unify as a team, but it was not going to happen because the team, Kansas, had a way more powerful ability to deal with embracing adverse situations. Right. And so that's where you get a drummer that may not be as fast as that drummer, but his team component, like a Lars Ulrich, or Larry
Mullen Jr. from
U2.
Yeah.
Larry Mullen Jr., huge component. He created the band. I was on tour with the Smashing Pumpkins, and they came to see us play in a little venue. We did weird venues all over the world. And afterwards, he was sitting, he's looking at me and going, I know exactly what's going on in the dynamics of that band because he was watching. He's a team guy.
Yeah.
He could see the interaction between players, and he nailed it. That blew my mind because now I went, oh,
Yeah.
boy, this guy is a valuable
Kenny,
guy. You too.
I gotta tell you this, and then I want to look at the comments, take a couple questions. I saw U2 at their second show in the United States. This was
Where was
back
it?
in, I think, 1981. The first show I missed, which was closer to where I lived. The first show was at what was called Wolf and Rissmiller's Country Club on Sherman Way in Reseda, California, in the Valley. And the second show was at a place called the Woodstock Theater in Anaheim. And it was a freak thing the way this happened. I had heard their hit single, I Will Follow, on the radio. And my friend said, hey, you guys are playing in 2 weeks at the Woodstock in Anaheim. Do you want to go this weekend and check it out? That new band U2 is playing. We went there. This place, you could not fit more than 50 people in there standing up. And there they were. My friend still has the prints of the pictures. And in that little stage about the width of a normal house-sized living room, they were in total control. I mean, it was amazing. And the bus driver, get a load of this. We got friendly with the bus driver because we stayed afterwards. It was the drummer for Iron Butterfly, was the bus driver.
Ron Bushy?
Yes. Like, what? It was unreal.
I experienced
I'll never forget that.
I experienced that 2 years later. I'm on tour with Mellencamp, and Scandal is opening up for us, or it's us and Scandal, us and Huey Lewis. They're opening up for us. And we have a night off, and we hear about this band U2. And I'd heard, so when they, in 1983, did they have,
Yeah, that's when the second album came out. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, we go there, and it's probably maybe 1,000 seats, maybe 2,000.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, first of all, Larry Mullen Jr. has that kind of marching kind of beat, and Edge has got this sound and delays on his guitar, and Bono, what the fuck is that guy? He's just completely, does what he does and takes over the whole room, comes through the audience with a flag,
Yeah.
We were like, where do you begin? This is new. This is completely new and so passionate and so real. It was blowing my mind.
But I just want to mention before I look at the comments, I just want to say one last thing about U2, good old boys from Ireland. I remember reading when they finally hit superstardom level, like maybe the fourth album or something, they were all still living at home with their parents. And that says a lot about the people they are, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, and when was it? Not this year, but the previous NAMM show, Kenny, before the Winter NAMM show opened for 2019.
Yeah.
They surprised everyone, and they were playing like if you're in front where the palm trees are, and you look straight up. There's that balcony. They played up there. U2. They belted out 3 or 4 songs. It was unreal.
What?
Yeah,
that's unreal.
And nobody knew it was going to happen. They just snuck them in. The music, I thought it was coming out of a PA, just like a soundtrack, and then you see Bono up there. It was so cool. It was
my God.
Yeah.
I was on tour in Ireland with Joe Cocker, and I called up Larry Mullins Jr. I said, Larry, you want to come to the show? I got tickets for you. It's Cocker opening up for Tina Turner in stadiums. And Larry goes, well, Kenny, that's so nice, but we got, band stuff we're working through. We're kind of having a hard time with this record, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, because he had done some sessions with Daniel Lanois. Yeah. He goes, Kenny, how do you do that session thing? I mean, how do you deal with people telling you what to play and what to do? And I went, you know what? I don't mind, because I get excited to play with all these great musicians and iconic artists, and I don't mind, and I'm learning so much. And I said, you know what? But you see, you don't have to do that, dude. You're part of a band. You're part of a family. Like literally, they're each, it's not Bono's band. Like I was in the Mellencamp band, but it was John's band.
Yeah.
I was a hired gun. These guys are a band. They're a family. So I said, that's rare. I think you should just work through your problems. You're in you too. You are you too.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about sessions, buddy.
That's so cool. Let's see what we've got. Oh, wow, we got people from all over. Let us know where you're watching from. So, first question just happens to be from John Kinsting. John Kinsting does a series on Drum Talk TV. He's done a series on brushes, boobas, and blunders, a series on the talking hi-hat. He's releasing a series that we're putting out now all about the shuffle. John's a great guy. I'm actually interviewing him tomorrow. John says, Kenny, I caught you in a drum clinic you did in San Jose, California about 10 years ago. I was floored. Great clinician. And then in all caps it says, greatest left hand in the history of the universe. What's the biggest thing that contributed to the development of your left hand? And keep it clean, this is a family show.
Oh, I said, oh, geez. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, you threw me for a second. I kept thinking I said the F word already. But
That's okay.
the left hand, yeah, exactly. Well, you know my answer then. No, the left hand, okay, I'll explain this. So when, it's kind of like when I learned how to play less is more.
Yes.
The less notes I played, the more powerful I got with that left hand. When I did my first record with Mellencamp, and I didn't get to play on the record. After 2 days of recording, I was fired from the record. That was Nothing Matters and What If It Did. I was devastated. I was just absolutely mortified, crushed, overwhelmed, felt like a loser, felt like what's happening to me. Don't you understand? I played with Leonard Bernstein and concertos, had nothing to do with getting songs on the radio to be number one. I had no experience. Back then, there was no Pro Tools, so you had to be able to play from beginning to end in time, perfect groove, perfect fills, perfect everything. They didn't like punching in and out on drums. Rarely. You had to have your sounds together. You had to have everything together. And if you blew it for the whole band, and it costs money. You could only do 3 takes on one piece of tape because you ran out, and then you got to get another roll, and they're like $500 a roll.
And studio time's $500, $1,000 an hour or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not like Pro Tools where you go, oh, you got one measure, just duplicate it. None of that, folks. Yeah. You had to be a bad mofo from beginning to end, take instruction. I had no experience, so right. I get fired. The producer wanted me out. So one of the things that it said, and I stuck around. When John told me to go home, I said, hey, I'm not going home. No. I was embarrassed. I'm not going home. Yeah, and when I said no, they went, it was kind of like when a boss fires you and you go, oh, no, you can't fire me. And he goes, well, what don't you understand about you're fired? I said, I'm not fired. I'm not going anywhere. They were confused. And finally, I just said, look, am I still your drummer? What's the deal? I'd only been in the band 5 weeks. He says, well, yeah, you're the drummer, but you're not playing on the record. I went, well, I'm going to go in the studio, and I'm going to watch those drummers play my parts. Yep, and I'm going to learn from them, and I'll get better, and I'll benefit from that. And you'll benefit because I'm your drummer, right? Silence. I'm like, shit. I go, well, you don't have to pay me. I'll sleep on the floor. Well, he went, okay. So he didn't pay me. I got to sleep on a bed, and I did learn a lot. I was humbled, and I learned a lot. And one of the things that I was told is that you're not hitting consistent in rock and roll. When an engineer is recording you.
So you're talking velocity-wise, Kenny? Didn't hit or timing or velocity consistently?
Well, I don't. The idea is if you hit the drum with the same dynamic, especially right. on 2 and 4, all the ghost notes, that's a different thing. The 2 and 4, they wanted the impact. So when they see the level hit the tape and they see it on the mixing board, the lights, they want to see a consistency. So you got boom, ga, 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 like a sample.
Like this.
And that ga, 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 ga. because rock and roll all is based on. Think about like Kashmir, do 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 ka do 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 ka ka. God, you depend on that, and if you get thrown off, it blows the whole groove. So Bonham was king of that. So I was going after that. I literally, after the 4 weeks of being in LA, went home and would practice to records like Stones, Creedence, simple Zeppelin like Kashmir, AC/DC, and practice. God. Now, in playing mallets, marimba, mallets, they don't bounce. So you learned how to lift with your wrist. Lift. With timpani, you use fingers.
Yeah.
Because you want the stick to come off the drum, but to get it to go back down, you throw your wrist down, you open your fingers, so the stick comes up, and then you use your fingers to make it go back down. So I learned finger technique, wrist technique, and then with doing a double stroke roll, you're doing wrist and fingers because you throw the stick down, let the stick come up, rebound, and grab it again, and shoot it down for the second note. And then what I did when I got into playing rock and roll more and more, I started to get into this kind of using my arm, then the upper arm, and then I learned to use my body, and I played from my belly button like martial arts. And so that's why you always see me moving, because I'm trying to use my body as the power. And as the years went on, because I hit so hard, I play with my back two fingers and definitely don't tighten the two front, which is we were trained to use that as the fulcrum. Right. But when you're using power, you got to I'm using my whole body like a martial arts, like a Bruce Lee. Yeah. And, or a tennis player, they spend half the time pulling the racket back, half the time coming through. The last thing that hits the ball is the racket, and they're not gripping hard. It's the body that's hitting the ball. It's like a golf swing. The body is where the power is. It's just one huge moving thing. And the wrist is just controlling, making sure you land in the right place. So what I developed that sound, I focused on it, and now, it's relentlessly the same,
That's awesome. Let's see if there's other questions. There's a lot of comments, people agreeing and affirmations and all that. Oh, this guy. He's a mutual friend of ours. Kevin Gazzara.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Kevin says, Kenny, can't wait to see you with John in October. You going to be out in the Phoenix area in October?
There's a lot of stuff scheduled, possibly. Oh. The way this whole pandemic thing's working is that, the first thing that with the Joe Satriani thing, we postponed the European tour, which was March 15th to all the way until June 10th. Okay, I was supposed to be in Europe right now. So they just completely moved it to 2021. Then I was supposed to go to South America with Satriani in August. They've moved that now to 2021. The reason, and then Fogarty dates, 2 weeks in July. That may still be on the books, but most likely that's not going to happen. The reason why, it's not just whether the band wants to tour, the venues have to be open. Yeah. And the venues, they can't be open for like 1 day a week. Everybody's got to be working to make it financially feasible for the band and the venue to be operating.
Exactly.
And there's just too many people and components. So sadly, everything is being postponed. Yeah. And my speaking corporate gigs, same thing. Although I'm setting up to do virtual speaking from my studio with sound and lights and everything. But the thing is, to answer Kevin's question, is if it's still in the books, then it's still a possibility.
Great. I would love to come see that. The Creedence Clearwater Revival was one of the first bands I listened to and played records to over and over and over when I was 7, 8 years old, which would have been 69, 70. So I've heard John interviewed on PBS. What a wonderful human being he is.
He can talk. He's an incredible, intelligent, brilliant man. Kevin actually was going to be at the last concert that we were supposed to play before they shut us down was in Phoenix, and they did shut us down. I did sound check, and I went to my room, and all of a sudden, beep boop.
Wow. Wow.
That was March. Oh no, yeah, Satriani was April 15th. That was March 15th that they canceled at the something stick Indian casino. Talking stick, maybe?
Talking stick, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where it was, yeah.
Kevin has another question, and I'm not playing favorites, folks. Maybe a little. No, I just scrolling and I saw this question because it relates to something that Kenny said. So he says, Kevin mentioned you to a friend, and he said he thinks of you as the only drummer that brings energy and happiness to every gig. Any tips on maintaining that consistency other than smoking a lot of hash before every gig? No, I'm kidding.
I'm
How
not.
do you always? I love this question because it's like a Zig Ziglar question. It's like a Tony Robbins question. The Kenny Aronoff question's the same. How do you maintain such a high level of positivity and energy and everything?
Well, I have to give credit that I was born that way, and I grew up in a family that everybody went to the positive. I'm not saying I don't get angry and get down at times, but I now as an adult I value that a lot. But the thing is, when you're positive, it just makes everybody around you positive, which makes your environment better. It just makes it. Now, when I was in, I won't mention people, but I've been around people where I'm very positive. I imagine myself as this little guy jumping all over the place and being happy, and I see all these other people miserable and angry because their life experience has done something to them, or they're chemically wired that way. And so I can tell they're looking at me, but that's not going to stop me from being Kenny Aronoff, because this is what I am. When you live by your purpose, which is who you are, you will be unstoppable. And you know what the ninth commandment, wait, 10th commandment, the 11th, there's 10 commandments, right?
Yeah.
All right. The 11th commandment in my book is, thou shalt not bullshit thyself.
That's
don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You might, if you start lying to yourself and BSing yourself, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
So
and so else at the same time.
Yeah. So you know what? When I was a little kid, I was the happiest kid in the world, and what was just mentioned about me has been with me ever since I was a kid. But I used to get teased a lot as a kid because I was the nice guy, I was the happy guy, I was the pleaser. I always wanted to make everybody happy, and that has served me. And thank God, my mom said it's okay to be like that, and I continue to be like that. It's it helps also bring you in. People want to hire you to have you around because you're an up person.
It's what you bring to the table.
There's another side to that, though. You have to be very aware of that. People can take advantage of that component. When you're a pleaser or you're trying to please, people can take advantage of you. And what I have is a mechanism that there's a certain point where they cross the line. I have to let them know that they are accountable for the way they're talking to me. And there's a point where I may be a nice guy, but you can't abuse. You can't abuse. There's boundaries. You can't abuse that.
Yeah, awesome. Let's see. I will ask. Thanks everybody. Lots of really nice comments. Everyone's enjoying this. I really appreciate that. And if you're watching this on the archive, if you joined us late, take some time, rewind, watch this from the beginning, because it's loaded with very valuable lessons, but they're only valuable if you embrace them and then put them into action. Kenny, last question for now. We'll have to do this again. Last question is this. I love asking this of every guest I've ever had, and it's the Kenny Aronoff fun fact question. When you're not playing music, when you're not writing a book, when you're not working on a speaking gig, when you're not doing something that has anything to do with your career, what do you like to do?
Well, I'm a big sports guy, so I love watching sports, and then to get away is I'll go to watch a movie that's brilliant, where the acting is brilliant, the directing is brilliant. I just want to get lost in something like that. And right now, I'm reading a huge 1,200-page book on Winston Churchill, and I don't read. I read slow, so it's going to be a while. But I'm fascinated by Winston Churchill because he was his own guy, and he was. There's only one guy that could have possibly stood up to Hitler in World War II until the Americans got involved, and that was Winston. And everybody else didn't. He was his own man. He really didn't give a shit what people thought about him. And if it wasn't for that attitude, he was the only guy that saw how dangerous this man was, to the event where, nobody believed it. And then one day Hitler took over. I should say the Nazis took over. Germany took over 3 countries in one day. One day. Yeah. In one single day. And Neville Chamberlain was going, hey, he signed this thing that said he won't invade. And so anyway, I'm fascinated by how this one man, with his intent, he stood alone. That's what I'm saying. He stood alone. It could be business, music, sports, your personal relationship, where he saw, he was honest with himself. He followed his heart. He knew that what he saw, and even by himself, he acted alone until he could get people to rally around him. And I'm just blown away by that. It's incredible because that changed the whole world.
Yeah, he followed his foresight. What would be a couple of your favorite movies that fall into that category you mentioned, with brilliant acting, brilliant story, brilliant directing?
Oh, okay. Well,
your favorites.
Well, one that talks about him, which got me to buy the book, was The Darkest Hour, where Gary Oldman won the Oscar for that. It's brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted. Didn't even recognize Gary Oldman. He gained so much weight. The lighting on it, the vibe. Some people say, well, it's only a short period of time. Dude, it's critical. Yeah. It explains who this man was. That one, there's one that didn't make it real big, but the acting, Christian Bale, anything Christian Bale is in is genius. And he's in it was on Netflix. I think it still is. It's called Hostiles. And it's about the American, the American Indian, and he was a soldier, and he had to escort. You have to understand that the soldiers, they hired soldiers to wipe out the Indians, sadly, in America by the U.S. government. And then he is then told to bring a chief who's got cancer from New Mexico to Montana to die. It was a political thing. The president wanted to look good after he'd slaughtered all the Indians. And so Christian Bale is ruthless because he saw his people cut and sliced and diced. And so he's a ridiculous warrior, a white man warrior, and he's got to escort this ridiculous Indian warrior. And it starts off where he says, there's no way I'm doing that. And he walks out of the room. And what happens, he goes on a journey. And I saw, by the way, the premiere with Christian Bale and the director, Scott Cooper. And the movie hit me so hard because of authenticity. Now, this is what I want you to watch it for. First of all, they shot it in sequence. I asked Christian Bale, that last question I asked him is your personality changed through the movie. He went from no compassion for the Indian to being completely brother with the Indian right before he died. And I said, usually they don't shoot scenes in sequence. They go, well, we're in this area of the terrain, we're going to shoot scene 1, 20, 60, and 90. And then you'd have to change his personality. Yeah. And he said, we shot in sequence, thank God. And every night they'd sit at the campfire and discuss what was going on, and they would rewrite the movie. Scott Cooper would sit with the actors and rewrite if it made sense. They also shot in film and not in digital. Not in digital. And in the elements, rain, I think there might have been snow. They just shot through all of it, and it's and Scott Cooper purposely took Christian Bale, and I forget the female actress. They're both English. She's brilliant. Amazing. He purposely took English actors so they would have no real understanding and reference of this American and the Indian plight, and that they would then go into this method acting and really study it. And they did. And anyway, that one, anything Christian Bale's in, those are a couple movies. I mean, I could go on obviously all the Godfathers. I'll never. I mean, what you would call it. Apocalypse Now. I mean, forget about it. I can't. That's just. But check out The Darkest Hour. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, my wife is and myself. But my wife is a deep, deep, deep history buff. So we're definitely gonna do that. Kenny, we will have to do this again. There's. Let me think. Hold on. Let me carry the four. There's 322 questions I still have for you. So I'd love to do this again. Folks, thank you for joining us. And folks, all of Kenny's social media handles are listed in the post, as well as his YouTube channel, as well as his website. Go to his website, check out his stuff on keynote speaking, check out his books, follow Kenny, and hang on the line with me, Kenny, and we'll talk about getting together again. And folks, thank you so much for following what we do. I hope you're all well and you're all safe and doing the right thing. And thanks for following Drum Talk TV. And we will see you again soon with more interviews with great artists with great value like Kenny. Thanks so much, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.